Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a look at Transformers Takara Tomy Generation Selects 06, and this is the new Lobclaw figure, part of the team of Seacons that they're releasing under Generation Selects. Over here in the West, Lobclaw is known as Nautilator, which I always found to be kind of an odd name because he's not a nautilus, he's a lobster, but you know, I think Takara actually chose the better name on this one. He's part of a pair of toys that released at the same time. He got released alongside Kraken, or Sea-Wing, who I just reviewed previously to this one. So we're 4 bots in now to the 6-bot team. And if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at Lobclaw's packaging. And there's 3 layers to this. We'll open it up, see the inside, then we'll look at his instructions, and then we're going to bust out Lobclaw himself in both his lobster and robot modes. I'll be doing some group shots, comparisons, all that stuff. I'll be covering the transformation to his limb and weapon modes here, so that I don't have a 2-hour-long King Poseidon video. And then at the end, I'll give my final thoughts. So right here, he comes in your standard Hasbro overbox thing that they do. C06, same old branding that these all have. And up here, and this I'm kind of annoyed about. See how it's all bent and dinged up? It's because when they package this, they put this flap like inside of that sleeve there. It got kind of bent and messed up, so they screwed up packaging this thing. Here, you get the little sleeve, and it's this nice little wireframe render of Lobclaw and the lobster and robot modes. And he's got a pretty infamous misspelling here. You can see it says Seacons Lobclaw. Lobclaw. Yeah, so seems to be a bit of a mess up because his name has been spelled Lobclaw in the past. I don't think it's like a rebranding or anything, just a typo. And here you got your typical mailer box with Generation Selects on it. We're gonna open it up. Selects logo here. And inside, there's Lobclaw, and boy, he's big in his lobster mode. I didn't realize just how big he is. He's really stretched out across the box. So you can see, pretty impressive size, which is nice. He's got this little axe weapon here. He's got a gun, which I'm pretty sure is the exact same as Kraken's, just unpainted. And then he's got his little fist. And Lobclaw is actually yet another retool of Blot, just like Wolf was, but he utilizes a different transformation scheme this time around. Instead of the robot legs folding up onto his back, it's just, they're laid out like this. So it's amazing what they can do when they tweak a mold in different ways. And then of course we got the instructions here. You can see, still that nice glossy paper. Parts layout up here. He actually comes with relatively few accessories compared to some of the others. Which, yeah, you know, not necessarily a bad thing. You don't need an overkill of weapons. As long as it makes them accurate to the original toy, who cares, right? So first you get his transformation to robot mode. And it's there, and then we go to, what's this, leg mode. I don't know why they do leg mode and then arm mode and then weapon mode on these instructions, because the weapon mode is always just a modified leg mode, but whatever. So it shows you how to do that, where it stores the lobster tail. Oh, I guess the tail's a weapon too. There we go, that's why he seems to have so few. Tail's a gun, makes sense. So yeah, then you have the arm, weapon. This shows you where to store all of his accessories in the lobster mode. And then how he's supposed to hold them in robot mode. Again, just like the other 2 deluxes, no mention of where to store his hand in robot mode, but there's probably somewhere you can plug it in. Kraken actually did that pretty well. Alright, here's Lobclaw in his lobster mode, as well as his accessories here. So you see he comes with this axe, which is pretty decent. Looks like it forms the hilt of the King Poseidon trident too. Combiner hand, same as the other deluxes. And then he has a rifle, which is actually the same exact one as Kraken's, just not painted green. So interesting there. Lobclaw himself turns into this very, very cool looking lobster monster. It's funny, he actually looks less monstrous than an actual lobster because he has more recognizable features, I would say. So he's got two big old prominent pincers right here in the front. He's got yellow painted eyes. He has a mouth that does open and close, and it's painted red on the inside, so that's very cool. Silver teeth. He's got the very cool lobster tail going on there. And this whole, spoilers, this whole leg mechanism is interesting because it's replacing the piece found on Blot, where instead of having, regular monster legs, it's this bar, basically. Has some notches in it for different positions, and then it just has lobster legs attached to the sides. And it doesn't attach to the chest per se, it just kind of rests in the grooves, which works just fine because you're just kind of using gravity to keep them pressed in there. So overall, it's very cool looking. I really do like this, and I think it's very interesting how they can just transform a certain mold in a very different way and end up with a very unique looking silhouette, very unique looking alt mode. So I'm definitely digging it. Now, all of his weapons can be stored in this mode. None of them have a, I guess, standard place to go on them. It's all just storage. So for the axe, open his little chest panel, and you just put the axe right there. That's that. And then as far as his rifle and his hand, you're gonna curl the hand up like a little ball, rotate the joint inward, and then you are actually going to plug the back of the rifle into the little cap on his hand. And I do want to say, on my copy at least, that little cap's a lot looser than it was on my other two deluxes. It comes out more easily. So just something to be careful about because it has a tendency to come off. But anyway, you get that on there, and then you just go ahead and plug it onto his back between his shoulders, like so. And it works. Not as cool looking as Kraken's, but not as goofy looking as Gulf's. Kinda looks like it's supposed to be there, if you squint, I guess. And, yeah, at least it looks like a weapon of some sort. Alright, here are the other two uses of this mold. You have Blot, and then recently reviewed Gulf. And you can see, they all just look very different from one another, despite all being the same base mold. You would not know. If nobody told you, if you didn't have these in hand, you probably would have no idea by looking at these that they're kind of the same toy. And I think that speaks volumes to, how good of a job they did. You got them utilizing very different transformation schemes, swapping out a lot of parts and everything. And I think overall it really achieves some really great engineering feats. Now, if you want to get really technical, Blot himself is actually a retool of Ripper Snapper, but I'm not going to go that far with it. So yeah, I think it's just cool seeing them together because they all end up looking like very, very different Transformers. All right, let's put him in his robot mode. First thing you want to do, remove all of his accessories if you haven't. Go ahead and detach his tail, set it aside. And take these little leg extension things, gonna kind of rotate them just straight down, and they have another tab that's gonna go into the back of the legs, like so. That gets them nice and out of the way. Now, before we mess with the actual lobster legs themselves, let's open these up, kind of accordion it down, close these, separate them. Yeah, flip that up if you haven't. Turn them around at the waist. Now the official placement for his legs, I thought they looked better like this, but apparently they just swing all the way to the back. And that's the way it's supposed to look. Which works, I guess, I suppose. All right, the lobster head, we're gonna go ahead and pull it back and just kind of out of the way. If it'll go, there we go. So. Arms down, gonna push his shoulders up and in, like you do with Blot. Flip his robot fists out. Turn the head around. And now this one, it's a little tricky. There's just like a very specific way you have to do this. Basically, they want it going like that, where it's pointing outward a little bit. It can go in this way, but I don't know. That's the configuration they say. Make sure the lobster mouth is closed if you haven't, just to avoid clearance issues. All right, this is the robot mode itself. Now, as far as accessories, the lobster tail, you take this, swing it all the way up, and it becomes a little handgun for him. And he can just hold it in this hand. And his axe is supposed to go in the other one. And this is what the instructions show as far as weapons he wields in this mode. And they are, I guess, the most appropriate for his size. Now that does leave the question of where do his other accessories go. And for him, it's a little tougher. You know, when it comes to just finding a place to store them, he doesn't have quite as many places to gain purchase. So, my recommendations, hand probably works best like kind of like this, just curled up around the back of the lobster head there, maybe like that. And the gun, let's see, now we got a clearance issue, huh? Guess you can do that. Maybe curl the fingers around the gun. I don't know. There's not really going to be a good solution for this. Like maybe this kind of works. Locks his legs a little bit. Or I guess you could put the hand on the back of the gun, but that's going to make him really back heavy because it's putting all the weight in the back there. So I'm not really digging that. How about the hand here and the gun there? Still gonna be back heavy, but maybe slightly less so. Let's see how that holds up. Kind of works. Not so much. Okay, well. All right, well, I guess it's unsightly, but I suppose the hand hanging off the bottom and the gun on top is really the best way to go. That's unfortunate because it's not a good way. Not great. So I guess that is what we're getting. And it's a lot less back heavy than the other way. So if you want to store his stuff, I guess that's really your option. He does have the hole in the front. So I imagine like Golf, he's gonna have clearance issues with his armor. Let's see how it looks on him. Yeah, it looks pretty silly. I'm not digging it. So it's really up to you. There's not really a good way to do this, unfortunately. So you can leave off the extra goodies, you can use your imagination, whatever works best. All right, here we have the two mold mates. You got Blot and Golf. Now, one thing I'll say, Lobclaw and Golf seem to have received roughly the same amount of total retooling, more or less, whereas one of them might be more similar in some ways, is different in others. So, you know, you can really kind of see the inspiration of the mold. Like their torsos, legs, and all that are pretty much exactly the same, upper arms. It's really just kind of the extraneous bits that have been swapped out, which is fine. You know, I think the Blot mold's a good mold, so you can get a lot of mileage out of it. Luckily, there doesn't seem to be any issues with like looseness in the joints, which is great. The one exception of his fists that like to flop down, but that's a new mold thing, so it's not due to, you know, degradation. So overall, I really like the way this has turned out. Whereas somebody with a keen eye can look at these and spot the similarities and realize they're the same mold, but at a passing glance, you know, casual consumer, they probably wouldn't know right off the bat. And I think overall that's the idea, right? All right, here's a fun little look at the team so far. So we got Turtler, Golf, Kraken, and now Lobclaw. And it's really coming together. One more pair and we will have the full Seacon team. And I'm pretty excited for that. These guys are shaping up to be easily one of the best, if not the best, combiner teams ever produced. And I am just getting really, really hyped to finally get those last two and build our King Poseidon. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and do his combiner modes. So first thing I'm gonna do, take away his accessories, set everything aside. All right, so do the tricky part first. So go ahead, pull back his lobster head, turn his robot head around, and bring the combiner peg up. Now you have to put this back in a certain place, but there's like a really specific configuration you need. So there's a third hinge here. You want this to be, or you want like the lobster head to be like as far up on that as possible. So you should be able to see all that right there. And then you're gonna bring this up. It's gonna be a pain in the butt. We can do it. There we go. All right, bring this up to where it'll lock in place. This hole should be pointing down and slightly inward. And that should give you clearance to go most of the way with this peg. Now this does actually block it from going any further than this position because of his head crest. You could, in theory, probably turn his head around and make it work. Let's see. Yeah, so it'll go all the way up with his head turned the other way. But then the problem is, you can see his face down through the shoulder. So there is a bit of a trade-off there. You get a cleaner arm mode or more posability. Can't have both, unfortunately, at least not with the official configuration. Now, you could always like drop this all down and this will still connect just fine, but we'll just do it officially. All right, now the hands, go ahead, switch back to like their claw mode, like so. I'm gonna turn his elbows around 180, and you are going to plug these tabs into the fronts of the claws here. That's what's gonna hold the arms in place. So the same thing here. Okay, there we go. Get everything kind of lined up nice and neatly. All right, so you got that. Be careful not to scratch the paint. You can see on my copy there's already some scratch paint right here on this claw. It's actually not from me, it came that way, unfortunately. So, next thing you want to do, press his feet together until they snap back to place, like that. Rotate his robot legs whichever way you want him to face. So we get this. And then for his little tail gun, you just plug it into the top of the lobster head, like so. Go ahead, take his hand, oops, plug it in here, and that completes the arm. Now, as far as weapon storage, the axe you don't need to worry about. It's going to become part of King Poseidon's big weapon. This, however, doesn't have a place to go. And the best solution I could find for this is mounting it on top or on the back of this little tail gun. Like, do it like that. Gives him kind of a shoulder mounted gun, keeps it out of the way, doesn't block any of his movement. And I think that's the best case scenario for the arm. So that is the arm mode, all of its glory. Overall pretty nice. I do worry about potential clearance issues with the lobster legs here if he's carrying a gun that has like a large back stock or something, but you could always just reposition them downward if you need to. Now with that done, let's do the leg mode. First thing you want to do is go ahead and remove the accessories again. Turn off to the side. Take the hand off. Now, let's do the top part first again. Go ahead, unplug his claws from the lobster head so that you can detach it and pull it back a bit. Bring his head up, turn it around facing forward, and flip the combiner peg all the way up. Now you can't see his face from the back of the knee. Plug the lobster head back in, plug the claws back into the head. Then all you want to do is go ahead and turn this guy to where his kneecaps are now facing his back. Collapse his legs down. nice and locked in there, nice and straight. All right, now as far as the tail weapon, you're actually gonna do kind of a weird halfway transformation. You're gonna bend the barrel of it at like a 90-degree angle. Then you're gonna take this peg, stick it in this hole right here. I'll just kind of slide up in there, point the tail part, just point it straight down. Straighten this out a bit. Now we get a foot. So our good friend Turtler has provided one for us. Such a swell guy, so he's helping me out. Go ahead, plug the hand into the back of the foot. Like you do with the others. Get it kind of nice and flat. And then you plug this right on top. And that is the leg mode. One of the cleaner looking leg modes, honestly. Like where everything just kind of trails downward. Again, as far as the rifle, best place you're gonna put it is probably right here on the top of the head. And it's just gonna kind of go like that. Though it does push the little tail out a little bit. So I guess you could point it upward, which shouldn't get in the way of anything, but looks kind of silly. Or you could also kind of mount it on the side, which will mitigate that problem with it colliding with the tail a little bit. Up to you. However you want to do it, or you could leave it off for a cleaner looking mode. But it's doable, the storage. Not the worst I've seen. All right, now lastly, the weapon mode. And this one's gonna be a little weird because it doesn't work as the instructions show it. And I'll show you what I mean. So go ahead and remove the accessories again. Take the foot out. That way. Take the hand off. Now you're gonna wanna flip the head around again if you want a cleaner looking mode. So we'll do that real quick. Attach these. Pull that back. Bring the head up. Turn around. Bring it back to a 90 like the arm mode. Plug everything back in. Alright, so you have like a modified leg mode now. Stay in there. Now, you're going to take both of his guns, the tail gun and the regular one. Put this back in actual gun configuration. Plug that in there like so. And then you are just going to plug the back of the tail gun into here, on the lower barrel there. This is where we run into a problem. So just like the other weapon modes, take the cap off of the hand, use that hand as like the base. When you go to put this in, you very quickly see that his lobster legs are not going to let this actually go all the way in. Not from a flat surface like this. So this doesn't work, because even if it's not on a flat surface, it just blocks the fingers. So I think the solution and possible intention is to actually fold these up this time, because it gets them out of the way. Now I will say his combiner port plugs into this in a much, much tighter fit than the other two deluxes. I don't know why that is. And it's not so bad when you have to push the thing in, like it'll go. I'm more worried about when you have to pull it out, because now there's like a spring and it's just, it kind of fights you a little bit. All right, so you end up with this. And the bottom little handle of the black rifle actually kind of helps hold it up. So it tends to stay more level. So that is his weapon mode. It's not my favorite one, honestly. I think it could stand to be a lot better. And it's unfortunate because anybody that's gonna want their King Poseidon or Piranacon in like the US configuration, if they're treating it as Piranacon, not King Poseidon, this is typically the weapon mode, old Nautilator. So it's a shame that it's not a better looking weapon mode. So far, I think I like Kraken's the most. So I'm not crazy about it. Probably the weakest mode out of all of them. Right, here's a quick little sneak peek of how King Poseidon's gonna look once he's done. Right now we're just missing an arm and a weapon, so we're getting there. Typically, Lobclaw would form one of the arms or the weapon, depending on which version. But my guy needs to stand up, so he's a leg for now. I did this so you can see how the trident's gonna come together. So basically you have Turtler's sword as the base of it. You have Lobclaw's axe as like the bottom of the hilt, and then you're using Gulf and Kraken's weapons to form kind of the top of the blade. And then there's going to be a matching sword and axe for the other side, and that'll hold it together nice and steady. So you get, you know, a pretty close approximation of his classic weapon. So yeah, I mean, this is all shaping up very, very nicely. You'll see that right now I only attached the weapons that are officially called out to be attached in the instructions. Just give them a clean look. You can go ahead and, you know, attach more if you want to. Deck them out with weapons, have somewhere to store it all, totally up to you. But I just, you know, kind of water them out of the way so you can see everything. So, what do I think of Mr. Lobclaw, aka Lobclaw, aka Nautilator? I think he's very fun. He's one of the simpler Seacons. You know, he doesn't have a whole lot of parts going on with him. Not a ton of accessories compared to some of the others. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing either. There do seem to be some issues with the instructions. They seem to kind of fail to address certain clearance issues and things, because I think they just kind of copy and pasted a bunch of steps. He also had some oddities with like his fists, you know, being flipped out one frame and flipped back in the other. I don't know what's going on with that. And then one thing to be wary of is how you position the little segments that connect the lobster head. Because if you don't do it right, it's not going to fit. The accessories won't plug in the way they're supposed to. So I think the figure is good. The instructions kind of suck. Which is a shame, because so far the instructions have actually been pretty good. They may not lay out exactly where to place every accessory in every mode, but they at least show you how to convert them well. And with Lobclaw, that's really not the case. So I would say definitely watch a how-to or a review, like, you know, this one, before transforming him, just so you kind of see how everything's supposed to kind of come together, because it can be confusing looking at those. Instructions aside, though, I think he's great. His colors are very cool looking. They seem to match perfectly up to Kraken's there, which I think is the point, because normally they're both arms, and then you got the two legs, Gulf and Tentacle, matching each other. So I think he works very well for that. I haven't really experienced any major QC issues on my copy. The joints are all very tight. There is kind of the oddity with the combiner peg, where it doesn't fit in the hole quite as easily. I don't know if that's a problem with the peg itself, or if maybe my copy of the combiner hand for him, it's just, there's some sort of slight defect in it that causes it to be too tight. It's not unworkable, you're just putting a lot more force than I feel comfortable with into attaching and detaching the peg from the hand in that weapon mode. So, I'll say, out of all of the Seacons, he's probably the one I'm least impressed with as far as presentation and QC. Doesn't mean he's bad in any way. He's just like the least amazing, if that makes any sense. You know, I still think he's great, and he's a lot better than many of the other combiner limbs we've received since Combiner Wars started. But I just feel like some tighter QC when it comes to the instructions, and, you know, making square pegs go into square holes, you know, would have been appreciated. So naturally, that is just my take on Lobclaw. I'd love to know what everyone else thinks of him. Do you think he's a good addition to the team? Do you also find him to be a bit, I don't know, lesser, or do you think I'm being too negative? Do you think he's amazing? I'd love to know what you think in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a thumbs up, let YouTube know that you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at Lobclaw, Nautilator, dumb guy. And with all that said, I will see you next time.